Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. I'm Brandon Ware. You're watching Angel 65, my channel for all things music related, music posts, and music reviews. And this is Chapter 2 of Rush Deep Dive. I'm calling this chapter The Classic Years, 1977 to 1981. I think this is a fitting title because although Rush, in my opinion, released very classic, very good albums in every period of their career, it is this period, and particularly the 4 albums from A Farewell to Kings to Moving Pictures, where they experienced the most rapid growth, and this is the most highly revered period of their career. All of the archival box sets, they focus heavily on this period, and this is the period where they probably gained the most amount of traction and fans, and to this day, the 4 albums that we're going to discuss here are some of the most revered recordings in progressive rock history. So, although 2112 is a classic album before this, and there are many classic albums after this, really this run of 4 albums, in my opinion, demonstrates some of the most significant and impressive musical growth in a short 3-year period of time, basically only rivaled by the Beatles' run from Help through Sgt. Pepper. I cannot think of any band that developed this rapidly and this uniquely in terms of their sound capabilities, their arrangement, and incorporating so many different influences. And it still blows my mind to listen to those 4 albums in sequence and just listen to their musical growth over this relatively short period of time. We start in 77 with A Farewell to Kings, and this is the first Rush album to make heavy use of the synthesizer, particularly the Mini Moog. We hear it right at the very beginning of the opening track, Farewell to Kings, where we also hear classical guitar and chimes and bells and new percussion. The jump from 2112 to A Farewell to Kings, even in the first minute of that opening song, is absolutely startling to hear how much their influences have grown and how ambitious they got within just a few months of writing and arranging. It's incredibly impressive. And again, as someone who had never heard progressive rock before, this blew my mind. I had not heard any bands that had done things like this before. And the level of complexity and the musicianship here and the writing is astonishing. This album definitely has a very regal English quality to it, probably because it was recorded in the UK. And it's one I really, really enjoy. I love the opening track, particularly the middle section, the bass drum groove that leads into the guitar solo. And God, should we go out of order here? No, we'll go in order. One of Rush's crowning achievements, probably my top 5 songs, is Xanadu. This song is fucking mind-blowing. I absolutely love Xanadu to this day. I had never heard anything like it before. To hear this serene, kind of atmospheric section that as soon as the band comes crashing in on that first chord, oh my, it's just so invigorating. The drums are outstanding. The complexity of the arrangement is unbelievable, and the lyrics, I had never heard anything like this before as a fairly young kid. I have dined on honeydew and drunk the milk of paradise. What? You could argue it's dated because of those rather fantastical lyrical references, but I just think it's phenomenal. And it's actually because of the story surrounding this song that I ended up watching Citizen Kane when I learned that that was the initial thing that inspired it before the lyrics kind of got turned more into Kubla Khan, which is of course the Xanadu reference, where that comes from in Citizen Kane. It's amazing how diverse my interests in art and other forms of music have become because of Rush, and A Farewell to Kings is one of the albums that certainly sparked that. Xanadu is absolutely amazing. One of their crowning achievements, for sure. Top 5. I absolutely adore that song. I think it's outstanding. Closer to the Heart is probably our first proper hit single. It was a hit in England anyway. Short, to the point, easy, palatable. Probably the most accessible song they've recorded to date. We get Cinderella Man with lyrics by Geddy Lee. Stories about Mr. Deeds, I think, which is a cool lyrical idea, and again, it's similar to the title track in that it has like this bass and drum breakdown, and then Alex Lifeson solos over the top of it. The ending, just all these complex time signatures, man. I could barely wrap my head around it when I first heard it, how complicated this was compared to anything I had heard before it. We get Madrigal, which is another kind of ballady type thing with a synthesizer on it. I like it, but it's not a favorite. And then we get the closing track, Cygnus X1, which again, just the complexity of the arrangement blew my mind. Lyrics about a black hole. It holds up pretty well, I think. Particularly the opening instrumental section, I think, is just phenomenal. And when they brought it back for Rush and Rio, and I heard it on that album, I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. It really works well live. The rest of the song I'm not so sure about. I do enjoy it within the context of the piece alone, but it definitely doesn't have the self-contained, grand, epic quality of Xanadu, which is really the standout track on the record. But A Farewell to Kings is still a favorite. In my opinion, it's very much a 5 out of 5 album. Absolutely essential. You must check it out. There was 2 5.1 mixes of this album. The first one was released in 2011 on, again, the Sectors box set. And then Steven Wilson did a 5.1 mix for the 40th anniversary. And I have not heard the Steven Wilson mix because I did not buy the box set. It was just too expensive. It's still too expensive, and that's the only thing that's unique to the box is the 5.1 mix, which I really wish Rush would have adopted a more King Crimson approach where, you know, in terms of the King Crimson albums, there's the big box sets for the diehards, but the individual albums are still available in dual disc formats with surround mixes for people that want to hear that but don't necessarily want to listen to all the archival stuff. And the thing is, if it had more archival stuff, like more than just one show, it would come recommended. But I have not heard that Steven Wilson mix, so I would love some comments to tell me how good it is. But the Richard Chicky 5.1 mix is actually probably my favorite of the mixes he's done, because he does use the 5.1 plane. He spreads stuff out, and again, it doesn't really provide any additional detail. It's not like you're hearing things that you didn't hear in the original mix, because even though we've integrated concert percussion and synthesizer, the arrangements are still pretty basic in terms of a 3-piece band. So it doesn't necessarily provide any additional insight, but it does add a little bit more space to it. So that was fun to hear. On the 40th anniversary box set, we got the Hammersmith Odeon concert, which was released in part on the Different Stages live album in 1998, and then it was remixed and released in complete form on the 40th anniversary version, which I really, really like this concert. In fact, I'm going to say this is one that comes highly recommended. I would recommend it even over All the World's a Stage, because it's a much tighter performance, and they really are just giving these newer tracks from A Farewell to Kings some proper, energetic live treatments, and it sounds great, especially Xanadu. Between the two mixes, I think I actually prefer the 98 mix more. It just sounds less boxy. I've noticed that Terry Brown's mixes of all the recent live material that's surfaced on the 40th anniversary sets, it just has kind of a boxy quality to it, and I'm not the biggest fan of it, but the 40th anniversary version has the full concert, so that is what makes it come recommended. Also on the 40th anniversary edition, you get more covers, which I'm glad this is the last time they did this, because I didn't find any of the covers particularly fascinating, and in fact, the Dream Theater cover of Xanadu actually very much pissed me off. I just think it's obnoxious to cover a song like that and basically make a note-for-note remake, because if you're going to make a note-for-note remake, why on earth would anyone listen to Dream Theater's cover over the Rush original? It really just sounds like Dream Theater showing off. I'm not a big fan of Dream Theater, as you might gather from this. I think they're very overrated personally. I think they're a band that takes musicianship to the point of showing off, and it's not actually that enjoyable to listen to what they're creating. Whereas with Rush, I think it's a good balance between dexterity and showmanship, but also creating quality arrangements of really good songs. And Xanadu is a great song, and nobody's going to do it better than Rush did, so I don't see the point. But the 40th anniversary edition is worth checking out for the Hammersmith Odeon show, which I think is fantastic and is one of my top 5 Rush releases that I would recommend for sure. Then we get to the run of albums where really these 3 albums in the sequence they were released, or reverse sequence anyway, are probably my 3 favorite Rush albums. I think the period between Hemispheres, Permanent Waves, and Moving Pictures, if we go in backwards order, those are pretty much my 3 favorite Rush albums: Pictures, Permanent Waves, and Hemispheres. Hemispheres is fucking fantastic. It is one of my favorite albums of all time. I absolutely love it to this day. And in my opinion, it's Rush's first perfect album, where the entire thing, and it's a very short record actually, only 37 minutes, it is just an incredibly satisfying lesson. You know, from beginning to end, there's not one superfluous note in the arrangements, which is saying a lot because they are very, very dense arrangements. I think the story on side A works magnificently. I mean, that opening chord, whatever it is, F sharp 11 or something, I don't know what chord it is. It's such an enveloping record, and the story works really well. I think the nod to Greek philosophy and legends is really, really awesome. Greek mythology, rather, is what I meant to say. And it's still applicable today. You know, this fight between the left and right hemispheres of the brain, logic versus reason. I mean, there's societal context to this that resonates even now beyond just the fantastical elements of the story. It's great. The arrangement is absolutely mind-blowing. And side 2 features 3 of Rush's most definitive tracks. Circumstances is phenomenal. I love it. I loved hearing them do it live on the Snakes and Arrows live album and DVD. They had to drop it so that Geddy could sing it, but it still works, even in, I think it's a whole step down. It's amazing just how much information they can cram into a short period of time, showing that you don't need to even be on the 18-minute thing. You know, you can also create something that's incredibly complex and dense within a short space of time, too. I mean, it's really pointing the way forward to the next album and The Spirit of Radio. Just the amount of information they can pack into 4 minutes is mind-blowing. We get The Trees, which is probably their proggiest song to date. Well, that and Xanadu, with the use of synth and wood blocks and chimes and the nature sound effects. Alex's guitar solo is phenomenal. The little allegorical story of the trees, I think it's very funny. You know, again, it's Rush showing off their sense of humor, kind of. And to me, it doesn't come across as pretentious at all. I feel like I'm in on the joke, and I think it's great. Just about unions and differences, equality of outcome, if you like. I'm gonna park that one right there. We're not gonna get into any culture war stuff here, but it's just, I think it's really funny, and it works. And then we get fucking La Via Strangiato, which is really, that is the definitive progressive rock track, man. It's all there. You got the synth pads, whatever you want to call, an incredibly romantic and beautiful solo that is just constructed from the barest bones to this chaotic climax. It's genius. You got Looney Tunes in there. You got your jazz fusion in there. It's all there, man. It's all there. And it's just brilliant. It is so epic. And I have an attachment to this song because when I auditioned for Regis's music program when I went to college on drums, this is the song I played. Of course, I didn't do anywhere near as well as Neil Peart would have, but I tried my darndest, man. I gave it my all. I played the crap out of those drums, and it worked because I got in and I got a good scholarship out of it. So thank you, Neil. I'm sorry I didn't do your parts justice, but even an approximation was enough to save me $30,000 in college. Thank you, Neil. My degree is not in math, but in music, by the way. It's in math. I minored in music, but yeah. Wow, La Via Strangiato. What an epic number that is. It just, and it's incredible to me that it has so many sections in it, and it's still so satisfying as a piece of music. It doesn't just sound like an exercise in self-indulgence, which is the subtitle. it actually sounds like an enjoyable piece of music to listen to. It is just outstanding, and anytime they added it to the live set lists, I was just enthralled by it. If I had one gripe with seeing the R40 tour and that being the only Rush show I ever saw, man, it would have been great if they put La Via Strangiato in there. It's epic, man. It's epic. So there's a 5.1 mix of Hemispheres on the 40th anniversary set. This one's actually really good. I like this 5.1 mix a lot. It really adds a level of clarity to the record. It doesn't necessarily, again, you're not hearing elements that you wouldn't have otherwise heard or that are buried in the stereo mix, but there's just such a sheen, a sonic clarity and sparkliness to the sound that really works in 5.1. So that one does come recommended. I think Hemispheres in 5.1 is great. Also on that set, you get some live material from Pink Pop and 2112 taken from Arizona. The 2112 recording is bad quality, not that interesting, but the Pink Pop Festival is really cool. The set list was great. They do La Via Strangiato. In fact, there's a video clip of them doing it as well at the Pink Pop Festival, included on the Blu-ray, and it's also included elsewhere on other compilations, etc. But it's great, man. Oh boy, do they go for it there. And it's a killer set. Great. I would recommend the Pink Pop show for sure. After the draining experience that it was to make this extremely difficult record that took them longer than any record up to this point, and featured by far their most ambitious and complicated arrangements, they decide to completely switch directions. So New Wave is coming into England at this point, and eventually America. Bands like The Police and Ultravox and the Talking Heads are now on the scene doing these more pop arrangements, but with like these subtle complexities and just weird elements to them. Rush is hearing that. They're young enough to appreciate it, as Neil said, and they try to incorporate that into their next album, and boy do they nail it, because Permanent Waves is This is why I'm calling this chapter the classic years. The growth between these 4 albums is just incredible, and the fact that they basically nailed it 4 times in a row and delivered 5 out of 5 albums is completely astonishing to me. And again, they're done in such a short period of time, from 77 to 81, basically 4.5 years of music that is just revered to this day as some of the great prog rock music of all time. The Spirit of Radio, man, one of their defining moments. In fact, it might be the definitive like prog pop song. The amount of fucking information they cram into those 5 minutes. It's basically the Hemisphere Suite or 2112 like condensed into 5 minutes. I mean, they go through like 4 different genres in that song, and it works. It is just genius. It's an incredible song. It's so perfect. It's one of their best opening tracks, and it works incredibly well. It's one of only 2 songs, the other being Tom Sawyer, that they never dropped from their set list ever. They played it in every single show since its release. And you can see why. It's just such a classic number. Free Will, again, I mean, it's a continuation of where we were on the previous albums, where it's basically a song, I mean, it's still a rather complicated song, with this kind of jam inserted into the middle of it that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, and yet somehow it just melds and works. Free Will's another song that I performed at my high school. I just did a bass and vocal only version of it, because I feel like even though the guitar part is incredible, the bass part is just so melodic and follows the contour of the vocal melody so well that it really does work in that format. And I had a lot of fun showing off for my friends, playing the middle section as close as I could to Geddy Lee, man. Oh, what a good time. Yep, Free Will's another favorite, as is Jacob's Ladder. And oh my god, the fact that they did it on the R40 tour. You know, in a way, I'm happy that I'm not one of those Rush fans that got to notch up show after show after show, because the only show I ever saw them do was just it's so fan-oriented. And the set list, man, they included Jacob's Ladder. Oh, what a brilliant piece of prog rock. Entree News, another one I really like. I thought it was really cool they added it to the Snakes and Arrows tour set list. It really works. It's a cool lyric. It's a cool musical piece, beautifully melodic, different strings. Again, this is one where Geddy Lee contributes lyrics. In fact, I think this is the last time that happens, with Hugh Syme playing piano and keyboards on it. It works. It's probably the weakest track on the album, but it's still a great song. And then we get to what is my favorite Rush song, and I think is their crowning achievement in terms of the longer pieces, which is Natural Science. I think this is really them at the peak of their powers in terms of just cramming so much information into a still relatively compact 8 minutes. I think the lyrics are phenomenal. The way the three sections fit together, the way they can take basically the same chord structure and iterate it like 5 different ways and make it work within this 8-minute piece is just mind-blowing. I love Natural Science, and of course they played that one as well on the R40 tour at the show I saw in Denver, and thank my lucky stars they played it, because it's my favorite Rush song. I still love it to this day. It's got some of Neil's most creative drumming, and at this point, you know, Geddy's voice, he's moved away from that shrill upper register. He's using it sparingly on this album, really only in Free Will and the end of The Spirit of Radio, but otherwise he's moved into this more mid-rangey kind of sound where he can still sing in full voice and sound very powerful, but not scare people away with how shrill his voice is, because it is a very shrill instrument and it is an acquired taste. But this is just evidence that he really is a great singer and he has a great sense of melody. And his melodies to Peart's lyrics, I mean, they give you more space. You're able to hear more. And the fact that it's not so much stories this time means that you have more time to digest and just accept the allegorical and philosophical aspects of the songs, which Neil is going to move increasingly in this direction in his future lyrics, where we're not telling stories so much as just expressing vignettes and like ideas of people, this more kind of societal observer. And Natural Science is a great example of that. It's a great close to the record. Again, Permanent Waves, to me, another pretty much perfect record. The only song that I think is maybe not as good as the rest is Different Strings, but I still like it, and so it's definitely not a song that keeps it from being a 5 out of 5 album. For me, it's a 5 out of 5 album. Another essential listen. You must check it out. On the 40th anniversary version, we got just a compilation of stuff from the Permanent Waves tour, which is nice, worth checking out. Not essential. There's also a Passage to Bangkok included on the 2112 Deluxe Edition from that tour. Works really well live, but again, like not essential. 3 songs from that tour would also end up on the Exit Stage Left album. You can skip the 40th anniversary version. There's no 5.1 mix here. It's not possible to do one because unfortunately the multi-track tapes have gone missing for this album. This, and I think there's one other, is it Grace Under Pressure? The multi-track tapes that were at Le Studio in Quebec are gone, and so a remix is not possible, unfortunately. And then we get the behemoth of all albums, the first one I heard, and in my Pink Floyd deep dive I said this and the Fragile, 9 Inch Nails, and Metal are pretty much all tied for my favorite album of all time. It's hard to pick one between them because I like so much, but if forced, gun to my head kind of thing, if I had to say what my favorite album of all time is, it's Moving Pictures. It is a fucking perfect record. It is their Dark Side of the Moon. I mean, it is just top to bottom 40 minutes of pure fucking awesomeness. It is so good. I love Moving Pictures to death, and it is the one album that I do come back to at least a couple times a year, and every single time it just takes me back to sitting on that propped up mattress against a treadmill, listening on crappy speakers, and how mind blown I was, and still am, by how great this record is. Tom Sawyer, in many, basically considered their signature song, which always blows me away that it is their biggest hit, because it's one of their weirdest tracks. It's not, to me, it doesn't sound like it's the most radio-friendly song on the album. It's probably the most radio-unfriendly other than The Camera Eye, but that drum break in the middle, and Alex's solo, the lyrics, the synth growl, the classic synth line, I mean, it's just perfect. It's such a perfect arrangement, and it's great. It's a killer opening track. Red Barchetta is, oh, see, I don't, this is why it's hard to talk about this album for me, because it literally every moment on it is so perfect, and every time I'm about to say, well, that's my favorite song, well, actually, that one's still really good too. Red Barchetta, to me, it's the quintessential car song, and the music just illustrates the story so well. It's, it's fucking brilliant, and that brings memories to me of going on vacation with my family and listening to that in the back seat of the car, just looking at the mountains going past, and just it's just such a perfect road song. It's the quintessential car song. I love it. I think it's great. The bass line at the end, particularly when Geddy's doing those cool fills on the bass part when they go back to the quieter section at the end, is just genius, man. Neil's fills on this are unbelievable. I particularly like the fill going into the second chorus, as it were, where just tom and snare against the bass drum on the offbeats. It just, oh, I love how it when they do it live, it drags just a little bit, but it just gives it so much more punch when they get back into that chorus section, if you want to call it that. And then we get what is, in my opinion, the greatest instrumental rock song of all time, which is YYZ. I actually said Zed, believe it or not. YYZ for us Americans. It's genius, man. And this is really the song that inspired me to be a bass player. When I heard that bass line, it absolutely blew my mind. And after I got my first bass guitar, I spent a year getting blisters on my fingers, just trying to learn that as close as I could to the way Geddy plays it. And I got fairly close, but I don't think I ever did get it exact. I still can't do it exactly. It's incredible. It's just perfect. I love YYZ so much. And then we get Limelight. Of course, Neil's infamous criticism of show life and just unrequited and uncomfortable adulation, which I must say I completely agree with. And I'll talk more about this in chapter 6 when I get to the Rush Renaissance. In the Time Stand Still documentary, you know, there's a characterization of the Rush fans when they do the RushCon thing of just being these geeks and like kind of wallflowers, social awkwardness, and that's the kind of people that like Rush. And then in Beyond the Lighted Stage, you get the complete opposite side of that, where it's like they're respected and revered for their musicianship. And I think the truth is somewhere in between. But I really dislike the characterization of Rush as geek nerd music, or like the kind of music you play while listening to video, or listen to while playing video games and stuff. And it just, yeah, that really bothers me, that the characterization that all Rush fans are just these weird nerd types that are socially awkward, because I definitely don't see myself as that kind of person at all. And I'm still a huge Rush fan. And I think the fact that some of these fans get so ingrained in like the lore and the legacy of Rush, or not the legacy, but the lore of Rush, and it seems like kind of their commitment to the band as an entity overshadows their actual appreciation of the music, really bothers me. And personally, I feel like they're the kind of people that Neil is singing about, or rather writing about in this song. That sense of just idolizing people and treating them, putting them on a pedestal and treating them as if they're infallible gods, I think is wrong. I don't think any rock star is really like that. And I think any that live into that characterization are really doing a disservice to what rock music is and what music means to culture. I just don't think it's right to see musicians that way. So I completely respect his sentiment in that song. And it makes perfect sense to me why he was always very reclusive and did not want to do press that much and hang out with fans, because I wouldn't either. I would find that very weird and uncomfortable, you know? The music should speak for itself. It really shouldn't matter what Rush does in their private lives and what kind of people they are. Thankfully, they do come across as very likable and good human beings when they're in public settings, but ultimately that's beyond the point. The music is what matters most, and that's what that song is about. Like, living in the limelight, the universal dream for those who wish to seem. Those who wish to be must put aside the alienation, get on with the fascination, the real relation, the underlying theme. What a perfect 8 lines that is. at the end of the day, you can't worry about people idolizing you and treating you like a god. Really, all that matters is the music, and that's what you have to remember if you're a real artist. Not a rock star, but an artist. And that's what Neil Peart is, and that's what that song's about. And the musicianship, the playing, Alex Lifeson's incredible, perfect solo. Many would consider it his best. It's certainly top 5 for me. Excellent. The first 4 sides, I mean, those are 4 of Rush's most revered, most appreciated songs. Flip the record over, we get the Camera Eye, which is really the last time they do the big extended piece. This one's 11 minutes, and it's just kind of a vignette description of London and New York and just life in the big city, what it's like. It works. I love the contrast between the 2 sections of the song, the slower tempo, and then they get back into, particularly Neil's fills when they transition to the fast part. Oh my god, that's one of the best drum fills ever. It's so cool. I think it's phenomenal. And see, I was saying, it's hard to say this is my favorite song because the other ones are so good. But Witch Hunt, man, that's probably my favorite song on the record. I think it's so cool. The lyrics, the melody, particularly that moment when the full drum kit comes in and they finally get into the groove where Geddy's going when that note comes in and he just does that kind of angelic high note. It's just so great. The synths on the album are done by Hugh Syme, but of course Geddy would eventually do it live, because although this is the piece on the album where they kind of treated it as the studio piece and didn't feel comfortable playing it live because it does have more overdubs and whatnot on it, they did add it to live sets, and I think it works really well live once they had the technology to do it properly. The lyrics are just so, I mean, when we did in high school, when I was in AP English language and we did a unit on the Crucible, I kept referencing the lyrics to this song and just how perfect and simple they are. I mean, basically the entire message of that book, The Crucible, or play rather, can be contained within this one song, and it holds up even today. It's such a good song. And then we close with a bit of reggae, kinda, on Vital Signs, which is, I mean, you can definitely hear like the influence of The Police and things like that in a song like that. And it's another one that really works well. The lyrics at this point, Neil has definitely moved into his observer phase, and this is pretty much where he's going to stay for the rest of Rush's career, maybe save Vapor Trails, where he does get more personal. But, I mean, he does this kind of social comment really well. It never comes across as condescending or pretentious. Billy Corgan said it best in the Beyond the Lighted Stage documentary. There's such a way that he can convey these thoughts that it sounds like sophisticated. It doesn't sound simplistic, but it doesn't sound condescending. It sounds like he's in the room talking to you. And the way Geddy can just manipulate those words into singable, very melodic and well-crafted melodies is astonishing to me. And that's really what makes this album pretty much my favorite album of all time. And it's one that I will never, ever get tired of. And I mean, it's the first Rush album you should go to. It just is. It's so perfect, and it is their defining statement. It really is the album that set the tone for the rest of their career, and the fact that it has so much variety on it within a very short, easy, palatable 40 minutes is still remarkable. The fact that it's such a short record and that yet you're not left wanting something more by the time you get to the end of it is still remarkable to me. Moving Pictures is a perfect record, and it is one of the greatest records ever made, in my opinion. Okay, so we do get there was first a 5.1 mix released in 2011 on the deluxe edition, which is fairly good, and then on the 40th anniversary set, there's a new 5.1 mix and an Atmos mix, the first Rush Atmos mix, and the Atmos mix actually is incredible. Richard Chicke's not doing what he did before and kind of just placing everything in the front theater, making it kind of sound like big stereo. He's actually really using the 5.1 plane, or excuse me, the Atmos plane with the overhead effects and stuff, and it works really well. The only gripe I have with it, and they're a little bit on the original stereo mix, but for whatever reason EQ was able to tone it down. On Red Barchetta in particular, there's one like splash cymbal that he's hitting in the fast part after the guitar solo. That it just sounds incredibly abrasive and not very defined, and it really hurts the ears. But other than that, it's fine. It's great. You should check out that Atmos mix. Also in that set, we got the Maple Leaf Garden show, which I'm actually going to recommend over Exit Stage Left because it's a complete show. It's got a great set list, and you really get to hear like the cool medley they do at the end of it, and they also include La Via Strangiato and YYZ, both the key instrumental tracks. You get most of Moving Pictures except for Witch Hunt, and you get a lot of the classic tracks from the earlier albums too, including Natural Science. It's a great set. They play really well. It sounds really good. Although I did mention Terry Brown's mixes do have a boxy quality to them, this one does sound really good. It's very listenable. Highly, highly recommend the Maple Leaf Garden show. You should for sure check that out. Over Exit Stage Left even. Speaking of, that's really the next thing to talk about is Exit Stage Left. So the album that kind of closes the second chapter. Rush admits that they went back and fixed a lot of things for this. And this album has always sounded very weird to me. It just has a very weird mix where the drums and bass are very dry and kind of punchy and loud, and the guitar is kind of sidelined a little bit. It doesn't sound right to me. It always has sounded weird to me. I don't care much for the mix of this album, even though it's got a lot of cool material on it. Had the Maple Leaf Garden show not been released, I would say you'd have to check it out, but I would recommend the Maple Leaf Garden show over the Exit Stage Left album. The film, however, it's available in the Replay X3 box set, which I highly recommend. The Exit Stage Left video is great fun to see them in their stage attire of the time, and to just have some visual accompaniment, and you get some songs that are not on the album, including 2112, things like that. That comes highly recommended. The video is really cool. And then there's the classic albums documentary for 2112 and Moving Pictures, where they talk about both albums, and it's good. I like these classic albums documentaries. I am surprised they picked two albums. Most of the other ones that the Eagle Vision has done, they've picked one album by a band and focused on that. And of the two albums that they talked about, clearly to me, Moving Pictures is the one that deserves more recognition. Like I said, I liked 2112 a lot more when I first heard it, and that's really the album that won me over and made me into a permanent Rush fan. But in later years, I tend to prefer the albums from this chapter more. This run of 4 albums is just phenomenal, but it's a cool documentary and worth watching. It used to be available on Netflix. I think now you're probably going to have to buy the DVD. I don't think it's available anywhere on streaming. But it's a good watch, and the extra material where they talk about their influences and they play some of the stuff along with the album, and you get to go into some of the multi-tracks with Terry Brown. That's all well worth hearing, watching. Okay, so Exit Stage Left really closes this chapter, and then Rush gets even more increasingly ambitious with the synthesizers in particularly, which is why the next chapter is going to be called The Synth Years, where we're going to close out the Mercury catalog with their final 4 albums released by Mercury. Okay, that's all for now. My throat is getting sore from talking so much. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. Let me know. Thank you so much. That's all. Bye.